Good afternoon and welcome back to One Step at a Time Farming. I'm Lucas and I'm so happy to share our journey with you. And this is my abusive wife, Danielle. Okay, not abusive, adorable, beautiful. That's what I meant to say, came out wrong.
Yes.
What?
I hope.
Okay, this is my lovely wife, Danielle. And yeah, I think today we just want to have another heart-to-heart conversation, heart-to-heart chat about the week that passed and share some of our failures and some of our victories with you, our accomplishments. Some were bittersweet and others were magnificent and glorious. Yeah, so let's get to it. Okay, I made a few notes. Okay, first of all, with the garden, thinking about some of my failures is that I planned the garden during the winter times using an app called Planter. Works awesome, shows you the companion planting, which plants are happiest with the others and what you can plant together, and shows you the combative plants that you shouldn't plant together, and also other beneficials like flowers that will call in beneficial insects or deter some pests. Wonderful app to use, and it would have worked out perfectly if I stuck to my plan. But coming out of last year's garden and some obstacles that we faced there as well, having to move from the one property to the other and try and rescue our garden that we had there and to transplant it here, and some things grew well and other things suffered a bit, and some things completely they grew wonderfully but failed to produce a crop. And learning from that, and there's also, I was maybe a bit over eager and zealous, so I planted vegetables that my family don't eat, but it looked pretty. Actually, some of them were the most productive plants. Speaking of kales and cabbages, purple cabbages, green cabbages, stuff like that. And my chickens had a feast. We learned from the lesson and we went back to basics to plant what we eat. And with that said, I decided to plant a lot more potatoes. And actually the thing that triggered me in that was that we had a bunch of potatoes that sprouted. Potatoes that we bought from the market and didn't use it quickly enough. So it sprouted and I stuck it in the ground. And also, it needs to be said that last year I didn't plant nearly enough. Okay, we did plant some, which was at the previous property, and we harvested that, but we didn't eat it. We blessed another elderly couple in our community with it. But having harvested it at that point in time, we saw that the couple of plants that I did have in the ground wasn't enough to supply our home for a year. So we decided, like I said, back to basics and to plant enough that will be sufficient for us. At this moment, we've got 48 potato plants in a dedicated raised bed garden. And I'm not sure whether it would be enough for the year, because we like potatoes, but it's 48 plants more than last year. And with a couple of plants and the harvest that we had last year that we gave away, I think this should be quite a big step in the direction of self-sufficiency. Okay, but that is where my planned garden went a bit astray, because I took up the space of one completely raised bed garden. It's not a loss, it's not a disaster, but I also, maybe being a bit impatient and overeager, I think I started my seedlings, my seed trays too soon. Yeah, I had a bad germination rate, or no germination, basically on our sweet peppers, which is bad. It is the last of the seeds that I used. And after I realized, I didn't have germination in the sweet peppers, we tried to buy seed, but we couldn't find seed anywhere. It's only last night that my wife could actually find a packet of California Wonder sweet peppers in a grocery store, and yeah, so she bought that. So yeah, there was bad germination on the one side, and also I started another couple of seeds a bit too soon. For instance, my winter squashes, and that they germinated excellently. But I had to get those transplanted into the space where my peppers would have gone. So yeah, my plans for the garden is a bit mixed up, and I had to make changes and adapt, and yeah, just try and recover from my own mismanagement in a sense. But yeah, we adapted with between basically the tomatoes that I directly sowed, and the squashes, the Hubbard squash. Basically, these two clashes with each other. So between those, I planted our green pole beans, the lazy housewife runner bean, which is a prolific producer. And basically it feeds both nitrogen to both the tomatoes and to the winter squash. And being that I can have basically the tomatoes and the squash in the same bed, because it's separated by the runner beans. So yeah, I had to make changes and adapt to that. Another thing is with the lettuce. My lettuce was left in the seeding trays too long, because I'm struggling to find space for them. The reason for that is the fourth raised bed garden is one that we started as the winter started. And I've got a lot of grass clippings and chicken manure, and also the bedding from the brooder barn that we've got in there. But during the winter, I didn't keep it wet enough, so it's basically like a culture type of bed that I started there. But the composting process weren't really active. So I can't plant in that bed. I've got a compost pile going there by the chickens, as you saw, that we will dress the top filling with that, so that we can utilize that garden. But yeah, so I couldn't get the lettuce into the ground, and basically it started wilting away in the little seeding trays. So I had to transplant them as well between the tomatoes with some onions. And actually this year I want to keep my tomatoes a bit spaced out more, to keep the heat between the plants down. But I think having the lettuce there now is doable because it's a shorter season crop. So by the times before the tomatoes start producing, the lettuce should be harvested already, so we'll be able to use that space. Also, another thing that we always try and do is to practice succession sowing, so that we try and grow and utilize the beds almost the whole year if we can. But at this stage, we realized we've got too little space and a lot more beds that we need to prepare. But at the moment, we don't have the soil and the compost for it, so it will be a process during the year. And I think if we can just add a raised bed or two every month, then at the end of the day, it should be fine. And then we'll basically do our planning month to month, planting month to month this year, if possible. And basically that's a good thing, because you know that every month you've got some produce in the ground, and when you harvest your first plantings, let's say tomatoes, in the first bed, then the second bed where your tomatoes might only be starting, but a month after that you can harvest. So you don't have this huge harvest at one time, but a little bit every month, and that will also take some pressure off of our garden space and off of our harvest season as well. We basically spread our harvest season then over a couple of months instead of harvesting trying to harvest all at once. Okay, yeah, so that's the challenges, but we don't focus only on that. We learn from that. There's blessings as well. We had a late frost, for instance, and like I said, my potatoes sprouted early. I put them in the ground, came up beautifully, and then we had this late frost that, black frost, that hurt some of the potato plants, and I was scared that I was going to lose all of them, but I'm happy to say that all survived. Also with the green beans, I planted them a bit early, but yeah, they're champion, everything. Well, we lost, not due to the frost or anything, but I don't know if it's a cutworm or a mouse or something, but only 2 of my green beans were, the stalks were snipped off, broken. Yeah, I don't know, it seems like it's snapped. Also, the herbert squash, the winter squash, funny enough, the Walton butternut squash didn't germinate yet, but the Chicago watered green or blue, whatever, Harvard squash germinated and started growing, really well. So I had to transplant them, like I mentioned. But it means that we have a good start on our squashes. Well, on our Harvard squash. I didn't even plant zucchini yet, or summer squashes. But it's a good sign. It's a blessing. Potatoes truly a blessing, and then also the sweet melons and watermelons. Started germinating now, and I've got about a week or so to find space for them. And also another blessing, I think, that came out of it is that, on the garden side, is that I've got a couple of projects. I have to build a couple of raised bed gardens, so it's always nice to DIY and build something. So it gives me something to do, and I look forward to that. And then, on the livestock side, we've only got chickens at the moment, but chickens. We are one step closer to having our own farm where we can raise more livestock. But we are blessed and grateful for the chickens that we do have at this moment. And they help us get to the bigger picture. So basically I've mentioned before in a previous video that my winter project was to raise 100 day-old broiler chickens for meat. And it was actually raised that we will take them to the abattoir and have the abattoir process them so that we can sell the meat to our community. And as soon as we had or received the chicks, we started marketing, and we had some good feedback from the community. But when they reached their day to be processed, we had we didn't get the sales as expected. We sold a few, and I thought, people would line up. So basically we expected a better response from our immediate community in our area. And we did sell a few, but not nearly enough to justify, or the interest at that stage wasn't there to justify taking them to the abattoir and taking on those expenses and then have them here in the freezer and nobody buys them. So I decided to rather, to cull the chickens myself and to process them myself and to stock our own freezer for the house. and have a year's worth of chicken meat in the freezer. And that's what we did. I processed most of them, and at the end of the day, we kept, of course, some of the hens were still a bit small compared to the others. So we decided to keep, it's about 20 or so of the hens, because at that stage as well, I sold all my Brahma hens, and our guardian dog also helped himself to a couple. But yeah, it happens. Anyway, so my abusive wifey, decided to to keep the hens for the 4 remaining Brahma roosters, and to start egg production and our own breeding program using the Brahma roosters with the Cornish cross hens, so that if we want to raise broilers again, we can hatch our eggs, or else have the eggs, like she said, for egg production. And I was quite optimistic about it, and it was fun. But then on Sunday,
Sunday.
Then on Sunday, we had a customer that stopped here, and he bought up all of our broiler. So we sold all of them, and that's where the bittersweet came in. The bittersweet is the fact that we had a plan, we had to change and adapt. Our plans made another plan that seemed quite suitable and proper for our vision. And then all of a sudden, you've got somebody that wants to buy everything, and you've got to make the choice. Okay, either, because at the end of the day, the main goal is to have a diverse sources of income on the farmstead, and selling the broiler chickens is one of those. So you've got to make the decision to either say, listen, okay, no, these aren't for sale, we're keeping them for whatever, or the fact that sell them for the purpose that they were actually raised for. And this person actually wants us to raise about, if you work it out, about 400 to 600 broilers a month. Well, he wants to buy 100 every third day.
Yeah, 100 every third day.
So he asked us to please, to keep going with the broilers, and he buys them live, and he takes them to the abattoir on his cost, and he's already got his existing customer base, but he's running out of suppliers, and he wants to procure us as one of his suppliers. And that's where the bittersweet thing comes, because now it feels like my wife's project that she wanted to do with the chickens is now again taking priority on the back burner. But again, on the other hand, this creates a more reliable source of income for us in the immediate future. But a victory, bittersweet, but still a victory and a blessing at the end of the day. Yeah, and at this moment, I won't be able to supply him with 100 chickens every third day, but I think we are, for the short term, going to try to do a batch of 100, and 3 weeks later start our second batch of 100. And then, I mean, you've got 100 chickens at the that you get rid of every 6 weeks, until we can double that again and get to the point where we get to 400. Yeah, so that is the plan for the immediate future on the chickens. But again, I feel blessed in the sense that we made back all our expenses on the live chickens that were sold during this time, since they were harvest ready up to Sunday. The amount of chickens that we end up selling covered our cost on raising the broilers. Plus, we've got a freezer full of chicken meat for basically a year, maybe a bit less, little bit less. Because, I mean, we eat chicken 2 to 3 times a week. But the freezer is full. And so taking into consideration what we would have paid for our chicken meat during a month, that's already a saving, a huge saving as well. So basically we are triple blessed on raising our own chickens. Of course, the cost for them is covered, the freezer is full, and we save on our grocery bill. Four times blessed, and we know that they are healthy, free range chicken, without any medicines and drugs and funny stuff. Yeah, and all that. They are raised healthy, and it's a blessing, truly a blessing. Also, just the fact that the word spread, basically to another settlement a couple of kilometers away, about our chickens is good. I mean, to have people traveling to us from another town, another settlement, to buy our chicken. I mean, that's a good compliment. It's a huge compliment. So the benefits from that is we've got the opportunity to start generating a stable income from the farmstead without having to search for outside work and stuff like that. It's a small step in the right direction, where basically we can we won't be able to live off of, the farmstead now, but at least it's starting to trickle in some income.
Falling into place.
Yeah, everything's starting to fall into place. It's a sort of the product, and yeah. The cons is basically, like I said, losing the parent flock for producing your own broilers, losing your experiment and losing the egg production. But it's still something we can pick up also in the immediate future.
I think another thing is with them not being sold when we originally wanted to have them sold, you get attached to them. They eventually start becoming like your pets. When they see you, they come to you. If you call, they'll come and sit on your lap. So you get used to having pets in such a sense.
Yeah.
And somebody comes and wants to buy one, and you're like, okay, it's one. And a little while later, another one gets sold, and then all of a sudden, you don't have any more chickens, you don't have any more pets. So it's sad. You get used to having them, you get used to your daily routine, they get used to a daily routine, and then the next moment they're gone. So it's adjustment. It is sad.
Yeah, it does. It's like when I had to cull the chickens and process them. It's the fact that you spend time with them every day. You feed them, you water them, you care for them, see that they are all healthy and good. But like I say, you pet them as well. It's like, there was 103 broilers altogether. But you've got a relationship with each and every single one of those little chicks up to the day when you say, hey, it's your one bad day today. And but I have respect for the process, for the sacrifice in that as well. Because we know how our chickens were raised, the care and love that they received while they were with us. And it's not like, it's one of the factory farms where they stuck in a little cage or in a little space and basically just force fed to get to a point where they get killed. I think they had a good life, and it's one of the most difficult things that I had to do to take their lives, to end their lives, but also it was a sacred and honorable thing to do because you value their sacrifice and you call them in a very respectful way. I know for you and Michaela, our daughter, it was a very difficult period to go through, and my son, he would join me in the process of culling the chickens. And I think he went through the same emotions that I did, but he, like a man, he stuck it through and helped me sculpt them, helped me clean them, helped me viscerate them, and helped me portion and pack them. You know, for a day or two. Other days you were at school and I continued. I did about 18 a day.
No, it's about 18.
In the beginning it was 6. The first day was 6, but I did 2 rounds, so it was 12. On the first day, and then, eventually I worked up to culling about 18 a day. And every single time that I take my knife and say a prayer, thanking God for the opportunity and thanking the chicken for his sacrifice, it is an emotional but sacred moment. It's not a fun thing to do, but I think it gave me a new respect for the food that we eat. It's not a faceless, packaged slice of meat that you get at the grocery store anymore. It was a living, breathing, and most of all, a relational being that was sharing his life with our lives, and which is now also nutrition and sustenance for our bodies. But it touches you in a way that you really can't describe until you go through the process yourself. And it's an honor. It truly is it's also that bittersweet. It's a difficult thing to do, but it's reverent, it's sacred, it's, difficult to explain. But on a good note, we kept one egg. It's my wife brought it in a while ago. I just quickly want to go and fetch it.
Baby's bird.
Mommy's bird. Okay. This girl now truly made it to pet status. She's one of the hens that we put with the Brahma roosters, but they immediately, because the Brahma roosters came into their sexual maturity, and they are worse than teenage boys. So basically, they try to mate with this little girl, and in the process injured her. So we separated her with a friend, another lady, outside of the cage, and she basically made herself comfortable at night here on our patio
Or in the house.
where she sleeps, or yeah, just in the doorway of the house. But she's still recovering because they really bullied her and injured her. And nothing is broken, and we're grateful for that. But yeah, she immediately came into her own as a pet and reached pet status. So she's not for sale. She's my wifey's little baby now. The dog and the cats accepted her as part of the pet family, and they'll play with her, they'll be around her, they'll guard her. And she's comfortable. Her feathers are starting to grow back here on her back. But yeah, she's quite chatty. If you walk past her, she'll call you, and then you have to rub her breast and sometimes just pick her up and give her some love, and then she's happy.
We call her Veronica.
Okay, she's got a name now. So I think a valuable lesson that we can take from this week is to stay adaptable, to change, and yes, to plan ahead, make your plans, but also be adaptable, when things change. And I just want to encourage you with the Word of God as well. Proverbs 19, verse 21.
Yeah.
Thank you. Many are the plans in a man's... Proverbs 19, verse 21. Many plans are in a man's heart, but the counsel of the Lord will stand. We can make plans, and plans will change. But if you submit to the guidance and the leadership of our Father, it is His will, His counsel, His advice at the end of the day that will prevail. And sometimes we get so caught up in our own plans, in our own will, in our own desire, and we try and be so rigid and fix everything, set it in stone, and then we quickly want to become very despondent, is the correct word, when things don't go according to plan. But instead of feeling despondent and unmotivated or seeing it as a failure, go to Abba Father and sit at His feet and ask Him for counsel, ask Him for advice, ask Him, lay your heart bare in front of Abba Father and say, I don't understand. I've planned this. I've done everything right. I've put so much effort in, and things don't go according to plan. But hear from Abba Father, what is His will, what is His desire, what is His plan, even with the little things in our lives. And as things change, adapt to it. we had an idea or a mission to raise broilers, to take it to the abattoir, to have it processed there so that we can have the seal to sell the meat. But then the interest wasn't there as it seemed like in the beginning. And we had to adapt and change. We processed the chicken, or most of it ourselves, and filled our fridge. Those that were left over, we made a plan to have it as our egg production, on the side, and also our breeding flock for, broilers in the future. The plan changed again. But if you look at it, at the end of the day, all our costs are covered. Our fridge is full, and it actually worked out for us in this specific moment in life actually more beneficial. And that wasn't my plan. That wasn't your plan. But ultimately, it's Father's plan, and it was better than what we thought. And with that is the additional blessing that we now have the opportunity to raise broilers. And we've already got an offset point, and that will generate income for us. So just trust Father. When things don't go your way, submit yourself to God.
So I don't think anybody should feel when going into homesteading or actually any point of life that the things you plan are going to turn out the way you want them to. My husband can be very plan orientated a lot of times with
Very rigid.
things. Me as well with other things, but yeah, sometimes your plans turn out the way you want, maybe not when you want, but they do. And other times you change your plans 3, 4, 5 times. But in the end of the day, don't get despondent if things don't turn out the way you want and when you want them. It will happen
The way God intended.
on God's time. We must just listen and learn to be patient.
Patience. Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, so we just wanted to share everything going on. It's nice being busy. It's nice being in spring season. It's nice being able to stick my hands in the garden and planting. And we just want to thank you for spending time with us today and listening to our heart-to-heart conversations, sharing in our joy, sharing in our
Sadness.
lessons, failures, sadness, and we truly just appreciate you spending time with us. God bless you, and we love you.
See you next time.
Next time.